Okay, everybody, welcome. We are recording. So if you want a copy of this recording after the presentation, it'll probably be by Thursday. It'll be uploaded into YouTube and you can find it there. I'm going to tell you how to do that. Getting a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to hold off to answer those until we get going a little bit. And that way it'll make more sense as we go. So welcome. This is Fertilizing Tropical Fruit Trees, basic course for you guys. And remember, we are getting a lot of questions in the chat. So if you do have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll answer it. So welcome to Tropical Fruit Tuesdays, Fertilizer Basics. That's today, December 8th. We have been doing these every 2 weeks. We're going to open it up a little now and do it about once a month, and then maybe 2 weeks once we get through the holidays and through reporting time. I got a huge report due at the end of, or at the beginning of December. So December 8th, we're going to do the Sapotacea, which is Meme, Sapadilla, things like that. And then January 19th, we're going to go back to something we did before, but I know a lot of you didn't catch it, which is propagation by air layering. So that'll be the next two that we're going to do. And I am an extension agent, University of, Shao says she can't hear me or he can't hear me. That could be on your end. Can everybody else hear me okay? Waiting for the chat. Okay, everybody can hear, so we're good. It's on your end. Try to turn your volume up. Okay, so I'm an extension agent. I work for University of Florida and Miami-Dade County. IFAS Extension has an extension office in all 67 counties. We also have research centers. We do have a research center in Homestead, which is where my office is. I'm in the extension office and the research center is right down the street. It's the Tropical Research Education Center. Lots of PhDs there working with tropical fruit. So I get to work with them and take their information and I extend it out. I'm a commercial extension agent, so I work primarily with commercial tropical fruit growers. Okay, I always like to start by telling you where you can get a good information. And my top choice is always what's called EDIS, E-D-I-S. So if you were to search EDIS space UF for University of Florida space, and then Mango, you would get a really good EDIS document on Mango, probably about 14 pages that have a ton of information, including what to fertilize with and when to fertilize. And EDIS is a database of University of Florida publications, and you can't get into the database unless you go through a peer review. So it's very good information and it's all checked out. So this one on the left here that we're looking at, this EDIS document, is understanding and applying chelated fertilizers. And the third author there, Young Kong Lee, he's a soil expert at the Tropical Research and Education Center. So I'll be reading a little bit of this as we go, and I'll be talking about chelated fertilizers. Another good place to get information is other universities besides University of Florida. If you were to search your topic and then space EDU, you'd probably get some university websites. Another good place to get information, I like it because it's very visual, obviously, is YouTube. And for instance, I bought a new pair of bolt cutters and I didn't know how to use them. So I just went into YouTube and put in bolt cutter, how to use bolt cutters. And I had a nice little 3-minute video of how to do it. Turns out it's pretty simple. Open them, close them. And then Tropical Fruit Tuesday, a great place to get information, but I'm putting it there under YouTube because it is now, all of the ones I've done before are now on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and search through YouTube and just put Tropical Fruit Tuesdays. You'll find all the old ones. This one, I'll probably have it up by the end of the day on Thursday. Miami-Dade Extension is a good place to get information. If you guys have received emails from me, down in the bottom of my signature line, it says commercial fruit information, and it's a hyperlink. If you were to click on that, you go to the Miami-Dade Extension Tropical Fruit webpage, and there I have information on where to buy fertilizer, where to buy pesticides, where to buy tropical fruit trees, how many acres of every crop is in South Florida, why your tree won't fruit, all kinds of different information there that will be really good for you. Another great place to get information is Master Gardeners. I see some of my favorite Master Gardeners are on here today, so hello to you guys. I was a Master Gardener, and very good place to get information. Probably the number one place for you to get information is your own garden, your own grove. If you see it happen, then you know it's true. So that's something really good that I implore you to do, is just pay attention to what's happening in your own garden and your own grove. You really get good information there, and it's, you know, it's true if you see it. Also, beware the source of your information. Don't just think because you searched it on the internet and it came up and that was the answer, or somebody posted a link to something, that that's automatically true. Anybody can put anything on the internet, so doesn't mean it's true. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, because the questions are kind of backing up, I think I'm going to try to answer a few questions first. Okay, so Arlene says, I have a lychee tree in a large pot. The root ball is in soil surrounded with bonsai soil. What's the best fertilizer? So the answer to that is, because you have it in a container, you're going to want to use slow release fertilizer. So what we're looking at here, this picture is some Palm Special, but this is a granular that you would put on the ground. You would not use it in a container because it would be too, what would they call, hot. It would burn your roots. So you want to use a just completely slow release fertilizer, something like an Osmocote or a Nutricote. Nutricote is also sometimes called Dynamite. That the whole thing is slow release. And for fruit trees, you always want that last number. Here you see 12,412 in the picture. The last number is potassium. You want that number to be higher than the other numbers. So we'll talk about that more as we go. So that is one question. Dan says, the bark on his mangoes trees is dark. Could they be missing nutrients? The nutrients won't show up in the bark of the tree. That will show up in the leaves. So they're not missing nutrients. If the leaves are green, you're in good shape. Jeff says, what are the best fertilizers for pineapples and dragon fruit? We're going to talk about a good general fertilizer for tropical fruit, and you can use that on your pineapples and your dragon fruit. And the pineapples, make sure you don't get the fertilizer in the middle of the pineapple. Bridget asks, I use diluted fish oil emulsion with our vegetable garden, and occasionally I spray some around the drip lines of the fruit trees. Is that okay? Yes, that's okay. That's fine. And Rick says, can you address possible causes of fruiting on only one part of a canopy, what appears to be a healthy mango tree? I don't think that's going to be fertilizer, Rick, but I think it could be, maybe that's the area that's getting the sun, or maybe the rest of it was pruned and that was an area that wasn't pruned. Those are possible answers, but it's really hard to tell. Dan asks, should resurrection ferns be removed from fruit trees? Do they indicate some illness? Never had them before. Resurrection ferns are these really cool ferns that turn completely brown, and then when it rains, they turn green again. They're not a problem. You probably have some near your fruit tree, so the spores blew in. And I would guess that the fruit tree is maybe a mango because it has all the grooves. So that would be a good place for the ferns to be. Not a problem though, so don't worry about it. They're actually really cool. You can tell when it's rained by if they're green or if they're brown. Rick wants to know causes of premature fruit drop. Fruit drop is really natural for fruit trees, and one way you can get around some of your fruit drop is using potassium. And that's the last number on the bag there, 12412, the last number. You can use something like a 0022 or a 0044 to give your tree a little potassium when the fruit are this small, and that will help them to hold on. Angela says, for micronutrients, I apply crushed eggshells and use espresso coffee grounds. That's good. We'll talk about composting a little bit at the end. Celia says, how do I fertilize a chocolate non-miracle mango to make it fruit in the winter instead of just the summer? That's going to be tough. I don't know how you get mangoes to fruit in the winter. But one way, if you're ever going to do it, you're not going to want to use nitrogen because that's going to make the leaves grow. Donna says, papaya trees have blossoms but no fruit set. It's supposed to be self-pollinating, and I have 2. What kind of fertilizer will the trees want? So again, I go back to the potassium. But papaya trees can be male, female, or both. So you may have a male, and that's why it's not setting fruit. Or it may just be too young. But if it's got flowers, it should probably be setting, if it's a female or if it's a hermaphrodite. Okay, so. Okay, and then Dan asked his same questions before, so we're all caught up with the questions. Now, fertilizer. Your trees need 16 essential elements, and they're broken down here into 3 groups, which we're going to look at in 1 minute. So the 16 essential elements are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, boron, chlorine, copper, iron, manganese, molybdenum, and zinc. So those are what your plant needs. Now, here, they're divided into how the plant is going to need them. So carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, you don't need to worry about those. They're going to be supplied by air and water, so you don't need to worry about those. And I do say 16 essential elements. Some people say there's 17. Nickel would be the 17th, but I think we're good with 16. Now, the rest of them are broken down between macronutrients and micronutrients. Macro and micro. So your tree needs all the essential elements, all 16, but it needs more of the macro and less of the micro, but it needs all of them. If it doesn't have one of them, it's going to show it and it's going to have issues. Okay, so it needs the macros, it needs the micros. There you see what the macros are: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur. Micronutrients: boron, chlorine, copper, iron, manganese, molybdenum, and zinc. Okay, so on a fertilizer label right here, you always are going to have these 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3. And these are always these macros: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, NPK, always in that same order. So this is 12% nitrogen, 4% phosphorus, and 12% potassium. So this is a palm special. This would not be great for tropical fruit because it's got a lot of nitrogen, and nitrogen, this first number, will cause your tree to have really nice looking leaves and put out a lot of foliage. So you don't want that. The last number is your number for your tropical fruit. That's the potassium. So you want that number a little higher. So a typical tropical fruit ratio is 8, 3, 9. So 8 nitrogen, 3 phosphorus, 9 potassium. That last number is a little bigger. And your nitrogen, you always want at least some of it to be slow release. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, so the macros and the micros, you can sometimes tell what your plant needs by where the deficiency is showing up. So macronutrients, they're going to be shown in the older leaves. So if the whole tree is yellow, it probably needs nitrogen. If just the new leaves, like this guava here, are showing their white, or the white middle leaf there, and you see the older leaf has green veins. So this is severe iron deficiency, and iron is one of the micronutrients, and that's going to show up in the newer leaves. Okay, so macros, kind of the whole tree looks like it's got an issue. Micros, if you see the new leaves coming out and they're having issues, then you know you need to get some micros onto your tree. Okay, so here's a carambola. You see the whole thing is kind of yellow. So I would say that this needs iron, but I would say it also needs nitrogen, because the whole thing is yellow. It's not just the new leaves. Here's some where the new leaves are yellow on the right, minors. So this is going to be going to need iron, which is one of the minors, or the micros. Macro and minor, and macro and micro, you can just substitute those. They're pretty much the same. This should say micro though, right here, micros. But they're also called minor elements and major elements. So back to the micros, iron, this one right here is definitely showing here in this carambola, and it's in the new leaves. So we know that it's this, one of the micros. If the whole thing, macros, it's going to be like this on the left, where the whole thing is showing an issue. And you see the trees behind it are looking good. The tree in the back right, you can see it's pretty much green, except the new leaves are yellow. So that's telling me that's a micro element deficiency. Okay, so Dan is asking me to repeat that. So I think I repeated a couple times, but I'll do one more time. So if the whole tree, if all the leaves are showing deficiency, then that's macro element deficiency. One of these big ones, one of these in the macros. If just the new leaves are showing, like this picture on the right, it's the minors, the micros. Okay, so if you see a tree, if you see a mango tree and the new leaves come out and they stay yellow, then that's iron deficiency. If the whole tree is kind of yellow, that's probably nitrogen. Okay. Okay, so we broke up the macros and the micros for a reason, because you're going to put them out in different ways. So the macros, NPK, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, the macros, you're going to put those on your plant as a granular. That's probably what you think of when you think of fertilizer, is the fertilizer in a bag. That's granular. And you're going to put that on the ground. And that's for your macros. Your micros aren't going to work that way, because when the micros get on the ground, our high pH, our soil, which is very high in pH, is going to bind up those micros and not allow it to get to the roots. So for the micros, we jump away from the soil and we do a foliar spray on the leaves. So that way the micros get right to the tree. And we do that on the top of the leaves, the bottom of the leaves, we spray the whole thing. Okay, now iron is one of the micros that we do a different way. We do that in a chelated drench. So we get the iron, chelated iron, we mix it with water, and then we pour it in the soil with a chelated drench. And I'll talk about chelation in a second. So that's how we're going to do this. Now the zinc, oops, sorry. The zinc and the manganese and the boron, those are micros that you're also going to need. Those could also be chelated and drenched, or chelated and then just put into the soil as a powder. Usually it's better to use it as a drench, but you could chelate those. As long as you're chelating them, you're going to be able to put them in the soil. And when I say chelate them, I mean you purchase them chelated. You're not doing anything to them. Okay, so reading a label. Here we have a fruit tree special. It's an 839. So first of all, we look at this, we see 839, and we know that's NPK. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. This is the percentage of each in the bag. So, and this is a 50-pound bag. So you have 8% nitrogen, 3% phosphorus. We always want phosphorus low because we have plenty of phosphorus in South Florida. We don't really need to put it out. And then potassium, that last number is very good for flowering and fruiting. So we want that number higher. So this is a good regular tropical fruit special that you can use. Now for mangoes and lychees, for both of those, I recommend putting very, very low nitrogen, not even this much, much lower. So you could do like a 0022, just the potassium for your mangoes and your lychees, because they're very sensitive to nitrogen, and it will cause them to just want to put out leaves. Okay, Dr. Green has a good point about iron. He says no chelated drench is approved for organic practices. Dr. Green is an organic grower. He says, but there is a chelated foliar spray, iron metasolate, manufactured by Albion. It is amino acid chelated rather than EDTA chelated. So that's good information. You can find that down in the chat. Okay, so we're looking at this label. We looked at the 839. Now I want you to look at the types of nitrogen. So you have 1% nitrate, 4.6 ammoniacal, 0.80 other water soluble urea, and 1.6 is water insoluble. So you're always going to have those broken out like that. Excuse me. And the first two, nitrate and ammoniacal, are very hot, meaning when you put those out, your plants are going to get them right away. So you want some of your nitrogen to be this lower number or the bottom number. So 1.6 is going to be slow release. And if we take any of this and we do something called sulfur coating or polymer coating, that will make them slow release as well. So if you look down at the bottom, it says it contains 1.9 units of slow release nitrogen. So 1.6 is here, so they're getting 0.3 from somewhere else, and that's probably sulfur coated down here. You see sulfate, etc. Sulfur coated urea right there. Polymer coated, sulfur coated urea. So that's where they're getting the rest of the slow release nitrogen. So when you go and you look at a bag, now you can tell what the three numbers mean, what they do, and you can look at the nitrogen and make sure some of that is going to be slow release. Okay, so our soil, I talked about this for just a second earlier. Our soil is oolitic limestone, and the pH is going to be pretty high. 7 is neutral, so 7.8 to 8.8, we're around there somewhere. That's pretty high. So that causes the issue with the microelements. So this is a nutrient relationship with pH. So don't worry about this slide too much because it looks confusing, but it's not that bad. Down at the bottom, you have pH. So 7 is neutral. We're up here, 8.8, 8.5, somewhere up here. And that is alkaline. Acidic is down here. So most plants like to be under 7, like 6.5 over there. But our plants have to deal with this high pH. So what we're looking at the bottom, iron, manganese, boron, copper, and zinc, and molybdenum, you should recognize those as microelements. And you see these little bars here, the fatter the bar, the easier they are to move in that pH. So these little skinny bars, they can't get through the pH. So that's why we use chelated iron and sometimes chelated of these other things as well. Or we use a foliar spray of the microelements because the pH will bind them up. Dan has a question, mango 009, can I add some slow release nitrogen? Dan, if your mango, or if your, yeah, it says mango. If your mango tree is looking good, if it's green, stick with the 009. Don't worry about the nitrogen. If you're putting mulch and things like that, that'll help with the nitrogen as well. And you might, keep an eye on the new leaves to make sure that they're staying green, so you don't need any microelements. Okay, so where would you put these macro and micro and iron nutrients? Where would you going to put them? So the macros, you put them on the ground. Remember I said it's a granular. So you're going to put them on the ground and you're going to put them at the drip line. So here's a drip line of a tree on the left. And you're going to want to come about a foot in from the drip line and a foot out. So about a 2-foot path there all the way around. So you're going to take your macronutrients, you're going to take your 839, you're going to put it in a bucket, you're going to put on long sleeve shirt, long pants, you're going to put on gloves, you're going to put a little mask on, and you're going to put some eye protection, and then you're going to walk around that drip line and throw the fertilizer out so it spreads out. You don't want it to clump. So that's how you would put out your granular. Now your micros, you're going to put them on the leaves. Remember, it's a foliar spray. So you're basically purchasing microelements. They're kind of all together. Then you mix them with water and you put them in a sprayer and you spray them onto the leaves. So they're going to go on the leaves, top of the leaves, bottom of the leaves, all over. The iron, that's a drench. So it's a powder, you mix it with water, and then you're going to drench it right here on the drip line. You're going to walk around and pour it out there. So a tree, let's say this tree was 8 foot wide. I think about 2 5-gallon buckets of iron would work around this. You're going to have to just kind of get a feel for it. So this is what you do not want to do. Here's a palm tree that has some palm special around it. It's not on the drip line. Obviously, it's right next to the trunk. And it's not spread out, it's all in a clump. So this is exactly what you do not want to do. So remember, you're going to put it out in the drip line. So here's a little loquat that's at the Fruit and Spice Park. You see it has all the weeds moved away from the trunk. So that way it's not going to get weed whacked. Has this little cage here to help it not get weed whacked. So where would I put the fertilizer? I would put it all the way out here in the drip line, way out here in the drip line, sort of where the weeds start. That would be the drip line. So here I would probably put 3 handfuls and just spread it out really well. So what about micronutrients? I'd put them on the leaves. I put them on the top of the leaves and on the bottom of the leaves. And Leonard is asking, does the foliar spray need any sticker? A sticker is something that helps the foliar spray to stay on the leaves. You could use one, but you got to be really careful because spreader stickers, they do sometimes react with what you're putting out and it can burn your trees. So I would go without it. But if you think you're having some issues, you could use it. But I would spray just a little in one spot first and see if it burns it, because spreader stickers can react with what you're putting and and burn your tree. Okay, so again, the nutrient relationship with pH, that's why we're putting something in as a granular, these macros, the micros we're putting as a foliar or as a chelated drench. Okay, so chelation, I keep using that term, but what does it mean? Okay, so here's a meme on the left that's showing definite iron deficiency. So if we put some chelated iron and we drench that, it's going to turn green real nice. Okay, so I printed out the IFAS on chelation that you see right there in front of you. And I'm going to read the spot under where it says, what is chelated fertilizer? The word chelate is derived from the Greek word chele, which refers to a lobster's claw. Hence, chelate refers to the pincer-like way in which a metal nutrient ion is encircled by the larger organic molecule, the claw, usually called a ligand or chelator. So they're putting something sort of around the iron so it can make it through the high pH. The pincer-like way the micronutrient is bonded to the ligand changes the micronutrient's surface property and favors the uptake efficiency. So that's chelation, and you're going to have different types of chelation, these ligands, EDTA, DTPA, EDDHA. So high pH, you want the EDDHA. You're going to find that also in this document. It says the effectiveness differs significantly. EDDHA chelated iron is most stable at soil pH greater than 7. So that's what you're looking for because that's what we have. Okay, so you don't want to just go and buy chelated iron. You need to make sure that it's EDDHA. So look at the label. Okay, so when do you fertilize? When do you fertilize? When do you fertilize? So let's look at this again. When we talk about when, we're going to just look at macros, micros, and iron. So the macros and the micros and the iron, which is a micro, but you're putting it out as a chelated drench. You can put them all out in the wet season, the rainy season, which is May to really right about now. We're ending up the end of October, beginning of November. So that's a great time to put out your fertilizer because that's when things are growing. That's when things are pulling. They're pulling things up from the soil. So that's a really good time to do it. So we look at this chart here, and this is for carambolas. And I talked about the IFAS documents, and the IFAS documents, they all usually have one of these charts. So it's January through December, and it's going to tell you when to do disease control, insect control, et cetera, but it also has right here, NPK, you're doing it at a low rate constant. So this dark green here is when you're going to be doing it most of all, which is, like I said, May to November, June through November. That's the rainy season right here. It's lighter green here, so you could do some there, but you're going to do very light amount. And then January, February, very, very light amount. So what I would do is I would do about 3 applications in this rainy season here. 1 at the beginning, 1 in the middle, and 1 at the end. That's what I would do with the granular. And you do not have to have your trees on a fertilizer schedule. If your trees are looking green and they're looking great, then you don't really need to spend time and money on fertilizer. This is really something that you would definitely do if you're a commercial grower because you're trying to get the most out of your trees. But if you're not, it's not always that you need to do it. You could do it. Now the secondary and minor nutrients, you're definitely going to do that in the rainy season. That's the only time it will work. So sorry. So you see November, December, January, February, it's white. That means do not do it then. I wouldn't even do it in March and April. I would wait till May, till it's a little more humid and you're starting to get some rains. That's when I would do it. And the best time to do it is after a good rain, especially the chelated iron, the drench. If you put that chelated iron drench on dry soil, it's not going to work well. So that is when. Now, you can get your leaves tested to see what they're missing, and they're going to come back with these levels, right? And I have the levels for some of the tropical fruit. This is the levels for carambolas. And so you have Brazil, Florida. These are two different times a year, the two Floridas. So if you get your leaves tested, they're going to come back with all these numbers. Then you take the numbers and you put them in here and see where they fit. So let's say your magnesium was 0.20 and it says magnesium, the bottom should be 0.92. So you know you need to add magnesium. Let's say your iron was 300 and this says 198 is the highest it should be. That means you're putting out too much iron. Okay, so that's something not everybody does. Not most people do not do leaf tests, but if you do, you're going to need this chart to go with it. And I do have some tropical fruit charts that I can provide you with. Okay, we don't have much time left, so I'm going to speed up a little. You also want to know what your fruit tree is showing if it's not showing a nutrient deficiency. So this sort of looks like a nutrient deficiency, but it's not. It's citrus greening. So that's where the scouting comes in, where you're looking at your things all the time. You can figure it out. This looks like a nutrient deficiency. It looks like a zinc problem, but this is Pythium root rot. Muriel asks, where do we get the leaf test? I do have a list of companies that would do that, so just email me, Muriel. This is herbicide damage. Looks like it could be sort of a nutrient problem, but it's not. This is normal leaf drop. This is just dropping its leaves. So this looks like a little issue, but it will just drop those leaves and it'll be fine. This is normal leaf drop. You definitely get this in the anonas. They look really bad, but then they drop all their leaves and then they come back really nice. This on the right is a tree that's planted way too deep. So it's showing deficiencies, but it's really, the issue is that it's getting smothered here. This picture on the left looks like it might be a problem from nutrition, but it's actually avocado lacebug, which is very common. This is cold damage. Sometimes your guavas will show this little red, and that's just cold. These leaves will drop. The new ones will come out, no problem. One thing I want to mention to you was the carbon to nitrogen ratio. What that means is if you're putting out something with a lot of carbon in it, like let's say you cut your grass and you took all the grass and you put it around your tree. So that's got a lot of carbon, and for it to break down, it's got to pull nitrogen. So it's going to pull nitrogen away from your fruit trees. So you don't want to do that. You want to compost it first. So here's some mulch from a mulch truck. It's pretty composted already, but I would let that compost a little before you put it on your plants. Otherwise, the carbon to nitrogen ratio is going to get you, because as that breaks down, it's going to pull nitrogen. Let's say sawdust. You never want to put sawdust around your plants because the high carbon is going to pull your nitrogen. Okay, and then finally compost. I apologize for my white legs there. So here's a compost bin that I built just using some wire, and you can put leaves, you can put twigs, you can put any kind of vegetables in there. You can put eggshells. You cannot put meat, so don't put that. And if you are going to put vegetable parts and things like that, make sure you put a lot of leaves on top of it. Otherwise, you're going to have rodent problems. So you let that kind of just bake there. And then over time, you can tip it over. And I do have a YouTube video on how to make this little wire bin. And you tip it over, and then you have some good soil down below. So here's a tip. You see all the good stuff down below. And you can use this compost in lieu of or synthetic fertilizers. So here you see some good stuff. And if you look real close there, I just noticed there's a millipede. So you're going to find a lot of millipedes, centipedes, and worms in your compost, which is really good because they're the ones that are taking these things and turning them into what can be used as nutrition for your plants. So there's some good compost, and I would put that around the drip line. Be really good to use in a vegetable garden. So good stuff there. Okay. So we're right at 2:46, so we're perfect time. And I do want to invite you to the next Tropical Fruit Tuesday, December 8th on Sapotesi. So we'll talk about mammays, we'll talk about canistel, we'll talk about sapodillas, all those. I'll be putting out an email on that. And like I said, this talk today will be on YouTube by the end of the day, Thursday. And if you just go to YouTube and search Tropical Fruit Tuesdays, you'll find all the old ones that are there that are all up. Michelle asked, can you do both the macro fertilizer in the soil and the micro fertilizer on the same day? Yes, you can. So no worries about that. Leonard says, can I post a link to my website? I don't know what link you want, but if it's of the talk today, just go to YouTube and search it. That way you find it there. Or you can email me and I'll send you the link. It's not going to go onto the website. Okay, so thank you guys for coming. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you for your time, and have a great rest of your day too. Thank you guys. I see all the thank yous. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, guys, have a great day. Bye-bye.